Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and I do want to get back into the headlines here as the World Court will not throw out genocide charges against Israel for its military offensive in Gaza, but also will not order a ceasefire. Announcing its decision on the eve of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, the International Court of Justice did demand that Israel try to contain death and damage in its military offensive. That decision coming after South Africa asked the court to order Israel to halt its operation claiming genocide. Israel, of course, denying those claims of genocide. I want to bring in Tal Heinrich, an Israeli government spokesperson, to talk all about this. And Tal, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here with us.
Of course, my pleasure to be joining you today, Josh, as always.
Well, first off, I just want to get the Israeli government's take on that decision that was handed down there by the World Court.
Well, the International Court rightly rejected South Africa's preposterous attempt to undermine Israel's basic rights to defend itself. As you know, on October 7th, Josh, we were attacked by the most brutal monsters, terrorists out there called Hamas, the Hamas terrorist regime in Gaza. They raped, they mutilated, they burned entire families alive. They killed 1,200 Israelis. They kidnapped 250 more. They are the ones with genocidal intent. You know, they write it. It appears on their charter. They say it, they chant it, they act on it. We don't need any more proof of their genocidal intent. And what did South Africa do? Well, they decided to play advocate for these devils. And this entire case pushed by South Africa is shameful. And it's a distortion. It's a distortion of the Holocaust. It's an insult to the memory of the Holocaust. You know, the term genocide was coined to describe the Holocaust, and only one, by the way, of the 17 justices sitting on the court, Aharon Barak, that Israel sent to represent us. That Israel sent to this case. He is a Holocaust survivor. And my country was one of the first countries to join the Genocide Convention because we know what genocide is, because we're committed to the concept, the principle of never again. And we're acting in Gaza right now to eliminate the Hamas terrorist regime because we said never again, and we mean it. You know, our goals in this war, as we defined them on October 8th, the war that we didn't start and we didn't want, they were justified a day after the massacre, and they're justified today and will continue to be justified for as long as this goes. And the goals are to eliminate the Hamas terrorist regime, to bring all hostages back home. And we also welcome the court's unequivocal decision in that respect, that they called for the immediate unconditional release of the hostages. We definitely appreciate that. And we also want to make sure that Gaza will never, ever pose terror threats to Israel again. And while we're doing these things, we are making sure that we're doing everything humanly possible on our end to minimize civilian casualties in Gaza and to minimize the civilian suffering in Gaza, as Hamas are trying to do exactly the opposite when they're using their people as human shields, when they're hiding underneath and inside civilian structures. They think that they will give them some kind of immunity. So we are committed to the laws of armed conflict, and we will continue to do so.
Did Israel overall think that this case was going to be thrown out altogether? As we know, the court did kind of say that this is going to go on for a while, but said that they do feel they should investigate. Did Israel think that it was going to be thrown out altogether?
Well, you see, we believe that this case is entirely meritless. Secretary Blinken, by the way, called it meritless a few weeks ago, because South Africa's accusations are baseless. They're factually baseless. They're unfounded. They're an inversion of reality and of the facts on the ground. We expect the court, today was an interim verdict, so to say. It's an interim stage. We expect the court to reject South Africa's claims as it reaches the merits phase of these proceedings. Maybe to better communicate what happened today, or what South Africa was expecting would be the result of today, to your American audience. Let me just describe this, Josh. Israel on October 7th was attacked on a magnitude of 29 11s. Okay, if you compare the size of the population and so forth, proportionate. What South Africa was basically trying to push is that, imagine if 3 months after 9/11, someone would have told America, well, you can't go after bin Laden, and also you can't run security checks at airports. This is what South Africa basically wanted. They expected the courts to tell Israel, well, stop defending yourself, even though Hamas, these rapists, and they're still holding your women, your daughters over there for more than 100 days in the terror dungeons, committing acts of sexual violence. Stop going after the terror masterminds of Hamas, and just forget about your stolen people. And I think that this is insanity. This is what South Africa expected, and we welcome the decision of the court so far, because it says that Israel can continue to defend itself. That's what we're doing.
And I know that Netanyahu had initially said, regardless of what the ICJ does rule, the war does continue and the fight against Hamas continues as well, right?
Well, you see, we are committed to the laws of armed conflict. We are, as we are conducting our war in Gaza, we are following international law, and we will continue to do so, regardless of the proceedings in The Hague, because we are committed to international law. On our end, we're really taking unprecedented steps already to make sure we minimize the civilian casualties and civilian suffering in Gaza. You reported these. We dropped, I think, 15 million leaflets. We called on the a population to evacuate from the combat zones. We designated special humanitarian aid zones, safe zones that the population has evacuated to. And we secured these humanitarian corridors so that the civilians in Gaza, with whom we have no fight. Our war is with Hamas, not with the Gazan population. Hamas are the ones who are putting them at harm's way when we want them to get out of harm's way. On the humanitarian aid, that this week, I think it was on Monday, truck number 10,000 of humanitarian aid entered Gaza because Israel is facilitating the entrance of these trucks. And we place no limits on the entrance of water, food, and medical supplies, and sheltering equipment to Gaza. And Hamas are the ones who are stealing some of these trucks, as you saw in some of the videos that you've also shown your audiences. They are the ones who want to see more civilian suffering in Gaza because they think that Israel will take the fire and international pressure for their sick methods of war.
My last question here before I let you go, Tal, where do things stand on any kind of ceasefire deal, the negotiations to get those hostages released?
So we want to see all of the hostages back home immediately and unconditionally. And as you know, the plight of the hostages is certainly the top of mind for every person in Israel, also of the prime minister, our troops on the ground, and the whole government. And they are the top of mind in every decision-making process that we take. Now, we are continuing to pursue every possible avenue to try to bring to the release of more hostages. And you and I talked about it before. We believe that the only way to create the conditions to reach maybe another framework that will see the release of more hostages, like the framework that we saw back in November through international mediators, is to continue to exert military pressure on Hamas and hit them hard. We're eliminating much of their force. Thousands of terrorists have been immobilized, or we neutralized them already. And back in November, they begged for a breather in the fighting. In fact, the terrorists on the ground are also begging for a breather right now. But the hardliners in the negotiations right now, as our defense minister Yoav Gallant described it, are the terror masterheads, the ones who are sitting in luxury villas in hotels in Qatar. So we will continue to do everything possible, and we're working these diplomatic avenues behind the scenes as well as on the ground, hitting Hamas hard, and we hope that these efforts will eventually yield the release of more hostages. We're doing everything possible on our end. This is the #1 humanitarian issue in Gaza right now, and it has been such since October 7th, the plight of our hostages.
All right. Tal Heinrich, Israeli government spokesperson. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help break down the latest details and the latest headlines that have emerged. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you so much, Josh.